Welcome to the deep dive.
Good to be here.
Okay, so today we're digging into something really core, aren't we? The team.
Absolutely. But maybe not the definition everyone uses day to day.
Exactly. We're setting aside the coffee break version. We're looking at sources covering Module 2 on team leadership,
Right, and it pulls heavily from the Team Steps framework.
which is designed for those really high-stakes places,
Yeah.
high-reliability organizations where mistakes are costly.
So, yeah, this framework draws some pretty hard lines around what a team actually is and why leadership is just crucial.
Okay, so what's the mission then for you listening?
Well, the goal is to get beyond just thinking of a team as like a bunch of people working near each other.
Right.
We need to really internalize the specific things, the functional criteria that make a group a team,
Mhm.
and understand why leadership is identified as, well, one of the 4 essential skills needed, especially with how complex collaboration is now.
Makes sense. Because you hear all the time, right? We need better teamwork, whether it's a hospital or, I don't know, a big project.
Mm-hmm.
But these sources seem to challenge that straight off.
Yeah.
They basically say, hang on, are you even a team? Because if you're just a group,
Better teamwork isn't the fix, not really.
okay, so let's start there. The foundational definition provided is what? A group of individuals working towards a common goal.
That's the baseline, yeah.
So what's the magic ingredient? What actually separates that simple group from a real functional team, according to this framework?
It really comes down to action, the kinetic energy, if you will.
Okay.
The sources define a team not just by who's on the list, the roster, but by what they're doing.
So it's active.
Yes. The key difference is active engagement in 3 specific behaviors: communicating, coordinating, and collaborating.
The 3 C's.
Exactly. If those 3 things aren't happening, like constantly, consistently, you don't actually have a team. You just have individuals maybe working in the same space.
That really shifts things, doesn't it? It's not about who, but about what, the function they're performing.
Okay, let's unpack those 3 C's, though. They sound a bit similar, but I guess they're distinct, especially in this high reliability context.
They are very distinct, and yeah, that's a great point, because they aren't just synonyms. Think of communication as the base layer.
Okay.
It's the effective, timely exchange of necessary information. What you say, what you hear, making sure it lands.
Information exchange. What about coordination, then?
Coordination is more logistical. It's the actual practical act of scheduling things, aligning tasks, managing resources.
Oh, yeah.
It's making sure my actions don't mess up yours. And, the right person has the right tool at the right moment.
So communication is data sharing. Coordination is logistics arrangement. Where does collaboration fit? That feels like the shared work part, shared ownership.
Precisely. Collaboration is the shared execution. It's where the communication, the info, and the coordination, the logistics come together.
Exactly. It's the synthesis. It means every single member is jointly accountable for the result, the outcome. And in these high-stakes settings, you need all 3 firing all the time. Because a slip in communication, that messes up coordination.
Which makes collaboration impossible.
It's totally impossible.
Well,
That's the whole mechanism this framework is built on. You need all 3.
Okay, so if team success hinges on constantly nailing those 3 C's, that really raises the bar for the common goal itself. The sources mention a kind of duality there, depending on the setting.
Mm-hmm.
What's the difference between achieving optimal patient care in, say, a clinic versus optimal outcomes generally elsewhere?
The core idea is always optimization, yeah, getting the best possible result. But what you measure changes quite a bit.
How so?
In a clinical setting, it's obviously very tied to the individual patient's health and safety. Optimal care might mean like reducing medication errors to 0, or making sure surgical checklists are always used, or cutting down hospital infections. It's very specific, very safety-focused, micro-focused almost.
Right, direct patient impact.
Yeah.
And outside of that, like non-clinical settings.
Well, think about something like a public health program or maybe a big project management team. The goal of optimal outcomes there might look like maximizing how efficiently the supply chain runs,
Okay.
or maybe ensuring a vaccine rollout goes smoothly across the country, or hitting project targets on time and under budget. The core actions, the 3 C's, are still absolutely essential because you still need that coordinated effort.
Makes sense.
But the metrics, what you use to judge success, they become broader, more about the process working well, organizational effectiveness, rather than just immediate patient safety.
That definitely sets a high standard. Okay, let's shift to who is supposed to meet this standard. Because the makeup of these teams, especially in team steps, Well, it's not static at all, is it?
Not even close. They're incredibly fluid.
Which I find that fascinating, the idea that teams aren't always these fixed, permanent structures.
Absolutely not. And that fluidity itself tells you leadership is critical, right? You need someone managing constant change. We often picture teams as, the stable ones.
It's like the regular staff on a hospital ward.
Yeah, exactly. The primary care floor team working together every day. That's a formally defined permanent team. But the sources stress that a really high-functioning team can also be like a rapid response unit.
Give me an example of that, a rapid response team.
Sure. Think about a trauma team in the ER when a major accident comes in.
Right.
Or maybe the specific ad hoc team that forms instantly when a patient has a cardiac arrest, a code blue.
Okay, very temporary.
Very temporary. Those teams might only exist for, 5 minutes? 20 minutes? But during that incredibly short, high-pressure time,
They have to nail the 3 Cs perfectly.
perfectly. Communication, coordination, collaboration maxed out. Their scope is tight, duration brief, but the functionality is intense. The key takeaway is that the team structure, its size, how long it lasts, it's all dictated by the task.
Which means team members have to be super adaptable.
Highly adaptable. Fluid roles and responsibilities are just part of the deal.
Okay, so if the team follows the task, and the tasks can be that complex and varied, the mix of professionals involved must be huge.
Oh, it's vast. It's definitely not just the doctor and the nurse anymore, though they're obviously key.
Who else is involved?
Well, the sources really push us to see the breadth of expertise required. You've got your core clinicians, yes, physicians, nurses, but also maybe radiologists, physical therapists, occupational therapists, pharmacists are critical. Their knowledge of medications is vital for safety.
Right.
But it doesn't even stop there.
So who else is needed for these optimal outcomes?
You absolutely have to include non-clinicians, people providing essential support, context. Think social workers dealing with the crucial psychosocial side of things.
Okay.
Public health professionals maybe tracking bigger trends or community risks. Researchers bringing in the evidence for best practices. Administrators making sure the resources are actually there.
Wow, okay. The list is extensive.
The depth of professional expertise needed is just massive.
So now we get to what feels like the real game changer in this framework, the paradigm shift.
Right.
Because if we were just doing a standard analysis of team structure, we might stop there, right? With that big list of professionals.
We probably would.
But the Team Steps approach insists on including people that, frankly, traditional models might see as the recipients of the team's work, not actual members.
This is absolutely the mandatory inclusion. Patients, family caregivers, and even communities are always part of the team.
Always. Not just sometimes, or for input.
Always. It's not optional. It's foundational to how they conceptualize modern high-reliability teaming. It just fundamentally shifts the definition of team away from being just a professional silo.
To something more like a community enterprise.
That's a great way to put it,
Yeah.
an inherently communal enterprise.
Okay, but that immediately brings up a practical challenge, doesn't it? I mean, how practical is that? How do you genuinely coordinate and collaborate with someone who isn't a trained professional? Like a family caregiver. They have totally different concerns, maybe different time availability, maybe different levels of health literacy compared to, say, an experienced nurse.
And that's precisely the challenge. That's why the framework puts such a massive emphasis on leadership. The professional members of the team have to adapt.
Adapt their 3 Cs.
Exactly. They have to adapt how they communicate, coordinate, and collaborate to actively include these non-traditional members. For the patient, what are their priorities, their goals for their own treatment? That needs to be communicated effectively and genuinely integrated into the plan.
Not just told to them.
Right. And for family caregivers, their insights into the patient's history, their day-to-day reality, their role after discharge, that's vital information. That's a form of collaboration. Their knowledge is a resource.
So if the professional team fails there, if they use jargon the patient can't understand, or they set up a care schedule that just doesn't work with the family's reality.
Then the 3 Cs break down. Communication fails, coordination fails, collaboration becomes impossible.
And the team doesn't achieve its optimal outcome. The patient isn't just getting poor care, they're actually a victim of poor teaming.
That's exactly it. And you can scale that up to the community level, too. Collaborating with the community might mean taking input from local leaders or public health folks to make sure an initiative actually fits the culture or is accessible.
Right.
When the community is defined as part of the team, the professionals have a duty to listen to integrate that broader context.
Yeah.
Now, their activity level might vary, sure.
How so?
Well, a patient recovering at home might be highly engaged day to day. A community providing input on policy might be less active minute by minute. But they're still mandatory members. Their input has to be actively sought and managed.
Okay, so if the team is this wide, I mean, from the ER doc in a crisis to the patient's daughter managing meds at home to a researcher shaping policy, the complexity is just...
Astronomical. Absolutely astronomical. Which brings us right back to why leadership isn't just some nice-to-have soft skill.
It's an operational necessity.
It's completely essential. Team leadership is explicitly named one of the 4 core team steps skills.
Alongside what others?
Communication, situation monitoring, and mutual support. But leadership is positioned as kind of the linchpin, the thing that holds and organizes all that complexity.
So let's nail this down. What does Team Steps actually mean by team leadership? It's not just about the person with the title, the boss, is it?
No, not necessarily hierarchical authority in the traditional sense,
Sure.
especially in these high reliability fields.
So what's the function? What does the leader do to make sure those 3 C's actually happen across such a wildly diverse group?
That's the key distinction, right? Leadership here is less about top-down command and much more about being the central coordinating hub, maybe like the central nervous system. The leader's main functional jobs are really twofold: structuring the team for the task at hand, and critically, creating the environment for success.
Right, let's break that down. Structuring the team in such a fluid world.
Yeah.
How does that work?
It means clearly defining roles and responsibilities for that specific situation. Remember the rapid response team.
Yeah.
The leader, whoever steps into that role, needs to instantly assign tasks based on who has the skills right then and there. They need to set up clear ways to communicate quickly and ensure psychological safety.
Psychological safety. That keeps coming up. Why is that so paramount?
Because it means every team member, especially maybe someone lower in the traditional hierarchy or maybe the family caregiver, feels safe enough to speak up, to challenge something that seems wrong or unsafe, to question a plan without fearing they'll be shut down or punished.
Ah, so that's essential for effective communication, especially in a crisis. If people are scared to talk, information gets lost.
Exactly. Critical information gets buried. So the leader isn't just directing traffic. They're actively managing the flow of information, making sure roles are clear, and making sure it's safe for crucial, maybe even dissenting information to surface.
It sounds like they're conducting an orchestra.
That's a perfect analogy, actually. The leader is the conductor. They ensure all the different instruments, the pharmacist, the nurse, the social worker, the patient advocating for themselves, the family member with key history, that they all play their crucial part at the right time, together, in harmony.
And if the conductor falters?
The music falls apart, it becomes noise. And in healthcare or other high-stakes fields, that noise translates directly into errors, into failures. Team leadership is absolutely central to achieving safe care, effective care, patient-centered care.
And optimal outcomes broadly.
Right. If leadership fails, the communication, the coordination, the collaboration, the very things that define the team, they just evaporate. And then, well, outcomes aren't optimized for anyone.
This has been, a really insightful deep dive. We've definitely established that within this Team Steps view, a team isn't just a static thing, a noun, it's a verb. It's about constant action, communicating, coordinating, collaborating. And we've seen that the who of the team is way broader than we might think. It fundamentally has to include the patient, the family, even the community.
Which leads us to that final, maybe provocative thought for you, the listener, to take away and mull over.
Okay.
If this framework mandates that patients, family caregivers, and communities are always members of the team, how must the core skills, the competencies of team leadership radically change, radically adapt to effectively communicate, coordinate, and collaborate with these team members, the ones operating outside the formal structure?
Right. How do you lead someone who isn't an employee, who has different motivations, different knowledge?
Exactly. What specific training, what different emphasis on things like relationship building or plain language communication must a leader develop to genuinely manage a team that is, by definition, so incredibly broad and inclusive?
A question that really reframes what leadership even means in these contexts. Powerful stuff.
It is.
Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into team structure and leadership through the lens of Team Steps. Keep questioning those definitions. Keep thinking about that broader team.
Thanks for listening.
We'll catch you next time on the Deep Dive.